If you asked me then, I would have sworn we were solid. Not perfect, not the kind of love people post with matching pajamas and long captions. Just solid, like a table that doesn't wobble when you lean your elbows on it. I had a husband who kissed my forehead before work, a small apartment that smelled faintly of coffee, and a best friend who knew where I kept the extra key and the ugly mug I only used when I was sick. My husband, Daniel, used the word busy the way some people use oxygen. Busy at work, busy with meetings, busy with clients who flew in last minute, busy with deadlines that somehow always landed on a weekend. At first, I admired it. I told myself it meant he was dependable, ambitious. I liked the rhythm of him leaving in crisp shirts and coming home with his tie loosened, his eyes tired but proud. He'd drop his laptop bag by the door like it was a badge, then wrap his arms around me and say, "Long day." And I'd answer, "You did good," because in my mind, marriage was partly that, two people enduring the world together, one long day at a time. He worked in consulting, the kind of job that turns time into a currency you never have enough of. When he traveled, it sounded glamorous if you said it fast. But the reality was always the same. Airports, hotels, conference rooms. He'd call when he could. He'd text when he remembered. I learned to treat his silence like weather. That's what I told myself, anyway. Because the truth is, there were tiny moments that didn't fit the picture I was holding up like a frame. A missed call that went straight to voicemail, then a text an hour later, in a meeting. A late-night goodnight that felt copied and pasted. A story about a client dinner that had too many details in the wrong places, like he'd memorized it instead of lived it. None of it was enough to accuse, not even enough to mention without sounding paranoid. So I tucked it away. I became skilled at folding doubts into neat shapes and stacking them where I wouldn't trip. And there was Mia, my best friend, who had been my person for so long that it never occurred to me to measure her. Mia was the kind of friend who showed up without being asked, bold where I was careful, practical where I got anxious. "Eat," she'd say, pushing a plate toward me. "Sleep, drink water, then we'll talk." We met in our early 20s when we were both still deciding who we were allowed to be, and she became family without ever needing permission. When Daniel and I got married, Mia stood beside me, her arm linked with mine so tightly I could feel her pulse. "You deserve this," she whispered before I walked down the aisle. Afterward, she joked that Daniel was my upgrade and her loss. Daniel laughed too, politely, like he wasn't sure whether to be flattered or warned. Back then, I loved that she loved us. I loved that she could come over and sit cross-legged on our couch like it was hers, teasing Daniel about how he never stocked snacks, teasing me about how I pretended I didn't care. She made our home feel fuller, like nothing bad could grow where laughter lived. Then, slowly, she started being around more. At first, it made sense. Daniel traveled more and she didn't like me being alone. "You get too quiet," she said once, sweeping into my kitchen with groceries. "Quiet turns into sad. I'm not letting you become a ghost." So she'd cook with me, talk about her job, complain about dates. She'd stay late, then crash in the guest room if it was too dark to drive. She became a second set of footsteps in the hallway, a second voice in the evening. It felt like support. It never crossed my mind to wonder if support could have an ulterior motive. When Daniel was home, Mia's energy shifted. Still warm, still familiar, but she watched him in a way I couldn't name. Not flirtation. Something sharper like curiosity. Sometimes she laughed too quickly at his jokes. Sometimes she went quiet when he entered the room like she'd been caught mid-thought. I noticed it, then decided it was normal because I didn't want to live on alert. And Daniel was steady. The man who rubbed my shoulders when I had a headache, who told me I was brilliant when I doubted myself. He remembered my coffee order. He remembered how I liked the lights low when I was overwhelmed. He knew my moods the way you know the roads in your hometown. So when unease flickered, I blamed myself. Stress, hormones, too much scrolling through other people's disasters online. I told myself loyalty looked like patience. In my world, the rules were simple. Love meant trust, and trust meant not digging. I didn't realize that the things we refuse to look at don't disappear. They just wait. The day everything shifted didn't start with a scream or a confession. It started the way most betrayals do, quietly, with something ordinary and modern and small enough to fit in the palm of your hand. A notification. Photos. The notification lit up my phone while I was at the sink, rinsing a mug that still smelled like Daniel's coffee. A soft chime, a tiny vibration, and then the line that should have meant nothing. Photos synced. Daniel was home. His suitcase sat half open in the bedroom, his dress shoes kicked off like he'd escaped them. He was in the shower, actually humming, like travel had left him lighter instead of exhausted. I opened the gallery. A new folder had appeared, dated with the last 3 days of his business trip. Daniel had always been terrible at taking pictures, the kind of man who remembered conversations but forgot to document them. So seeing dozens of images felt almost thoughtful, like he'd finally started saving pieces of his life for me. The first photo was the airport, a departure board blurry at the edges. The second was his suitcase beside a coffee shop sign, then a view from a hotel window, gray skyline, rain on the glass, conference badges, a plate of food that looked too expensive to taste good, a group of people in suits smiling like they'd been told to. Normal, boring proof. My shoulders loosened. See, I thought, this is what trust looks like when you don't invent problems. Then I swiped. At first, I didn't understand what I was seeing. Warm lighting, maybe a restaurant or a hotel lounge. The focus was on a table, drinks, bread, someone's hand reaching for a napkin. The angle was casual, like it had been snapped mid-laugh. But in the background, reflected in a mirror, was a woman's face. My brain slowed down, trying to soften what it recognized. Dark hair, familiar cheekbones, a small mole near her mouth. Mia. I blinked hard, like my eyes could rearrange the pixels into someone else. I zoomed in, fingers suddenly clumsy. The image got grainier, but the certainty got louder. It was her, the same face that had hugged me goodbye 2 nights ago and said, "Call me if you get lonely." My stomach dipped, as if the floor had moved. I swiped back, then forward again. Maybe it was a look-alike. Mia wasn't on this trip. Daniel hadn't said her name. She had posted a photo of her lunch the day before. She had texted me a heart emoji and complained about being tired. Then I saw the bracelet. A simple gold chain with a tiny round charm. Not expensive, not flashy, but unmistakable because I'd helped her pick it out. We wandered through a street market last summer, laughing at overpriced trinkets, and she'd slipped it on and said, "This one feels like me." In the photo, that bracelet was on the wrist of the woman in the mirror. Evidence doesn't always arrive with sirens. Sometimes it's a charm the size of a coin. I scrolled faster as if speed could outrun what I'd found. Airport, hotel bed, conference room, a blurry selfie of Daniel's face, smiling like he was trying. Then another restaurant shot, clearer this time, and there she was again, Mia's hair at the edge of the frame, her hand in the corner, that bracelet flashing like a warning. I froze, phone heavy in my palm. The bathroom door opened. Steam rolled out. Daniel padded into the hallway in a towel, hair damp, face relaxed. "Hey," he called like nothing in the world could break. "I'm starving, want to order in." My voice nearly answered automatically. Habit is a powerful thing. I managed, sure, because my brain was buying time. Daniel disappeared into the bedroom, rummaging through his suitcase. I sat at the kitchen table and forced myself to scroll again, slower now, like a detective replaying footage. That's when I saw the baby. The photo looked harmless at first glance. A hotel lobby with shiny floors, a massive flower arrangement, sunlight pouring through tall windows. Daniel must have taken it because it looked impressive, or because he wanted to prove where he was. But in the foreground, pushing a stroller, was Mia. And in that stroller, bundled in a pale blanket, tiny fist near its mouth, was a baby. My heart didn't pound. It went silent, as if it had forgotten its job. I stared until my eyes ached. The baby's face was half-turned, soft and round, the way newborns look like they're still deciding whether to stay. A little tuft of dark hair, pink cheeks, a stroller handle gripped by Mia's familiar hands. A baby. Not mine. Heat rose up my neck, then cold spread through my chest. My mind started grabbing at explanations like loose threads. Maybe it was her cousin's baby. Maybe she was helping someone. Maybe this photo was older, a memory that had resurfaced. But the date stamped at the top was yesterday. My thumb hovered over the timestamp like it could bite me. I checked the time zone, the file name, the little info icon, anything that could turn yesterday into last year. But every tap only tightened the knot. The location tag matched the city on Daniel's itinerary. The upload time matched the hour he texted me, sorry, can't talk, client dinner. I remembered answering with a smiley face, like I was being supportive, like I wasn't being fooled again. Yesterday, when Daniel was supposedly with clients. Yesterday, when Mia told me she was dead tired and going to bed early. I zoomed in until the pixels broke apart. The blanket had a pattern, tiny stars. The stroller had a scratch on the side. Mia's bracelet glinted again, cruelly consistent. And then my brain did the math. The baby was too small to be an "oh, I'm babysitting" situation. This wasn't a toddler dropped off for a few hours. This was a baby that needed bottles, constant care, a mother, or someone pretending to be one. A baby that belonged to a life with routines, sleepless nights, and the kind of intimacy you don't stumble into by accident. My hands started shaking so badly, I had to set the phone down. I pressed my palm against my mouth to keep myself quiet. From the bedroom, Daniel called, "Babe, what do you want? Thai, pizza." I looked toward the hallway at the familiar shape of our life. Our framed photos, our shoes by the door, the little plant Mia had gifted me. Everything looked the same. And yet something had moved behind the wallpaper, something alive and hungry. I picked up the phone again, as if staring long enough would change the truth. I swiped backward, forward, backward, trying to catch the moment where my world had split in two. All I found were more angles, more confirmations, more tiny details that refused to behave like coincidences. I whispered, "There has to be an explanation," but it sounded like a prayer I didn't believe. Still, I tried to make it normal. I told myself I would ask Daniel casually. I told myself Mia would laugh and explain. I told myself my mind was spiraling because it was easier to doubt myself than to doubt them. I didn't know yet that denial isn't peace. It's just the pause before the pattern becomes undeniable. I didn't sleep that night. I lay beside Daniel listening to his breathing, steady and innocent sounding, while my mind replayed the photo like a punishment loop. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Mia's bracelet glinting in a place it had no right to be. I told myself I was being dramatic. I told myself love meant giving the benefit of the doubt. And then my stomach would twist and whisper back, "Benefit of the doubt is how people get buried." By morning, I had decided on a strategy that felt like sanity. I would ask gently, calmly, like a wife who trusts her husband but wants clarity. If there was an explanation, it would come easily. If there wasn't, well, I would hear that too. Daniel was making toast when I walked into the kitchen. He looked refreshed, almost boyish, as if travel had been a reset instead of a strain. He turned and smiled. "Morning," he said, leaning in for a kiss. I let him kiss me because pulling away would reveal too much. The contrast was unbearable. His warm mouth, my cold suspicion. "Did you have a good trip?" I asked, keeping my voice light. "Productive," he said. "Long meetings, you know how it is." I watched him butter the toast with the casual confidence of someone who believed the world still belonged to him. Then I reached for my phone and opened the photo. Not the baby. Not yet. I chose the restaurant shot, the mirror reflection, the hint, the hook. "Hey," I said, as if I'd found something funny. "This picture, who's that in the background?" Daniel glanced over. 1 second. 2. His eyes barely touched the screen before he looked away. "Probably someone at the place," he said. "I didn't even notice." I forced a laugh. "Looks kind of like Mia." He shrugged, too smooth. "Lots of people look alike." My pulse thudded in my ears. I tried again, softer, giving him a ramp instead of a wall. "It's just that bracelet, the one we bought with her. It really looks like hers." Daniel took a bite of toast, chewed, swallowed. "Babe," he said with a sigh that carried practiced patience. You're overthinking. I was with clients. It was busy. I snapped some photos. That's it. There it was, the phrase that always made me doubt myself. Overthinking. The word men use when women get too close to the truth. I nodded like I'd been corrected. Okay, yeah, probably. He kissed my temple, gentle, almost tender. Work has been insane. Don't do this to yourself. Don't do this to yourself. As if my questions were a self-inflicted wound, not a response to evidence. I waited until he left for work. The door clicked shut, and the apartment suddenly felt too quiet, like it was holding its breath with me. I stared at the phone again, thumb hovering over the baby photo. Not yet, I told myself. Not until I can ask Mia without sounding crazy. Mia answered on the second ring, cheerful. Hey, love, you okay? Her voice was so normal it almost worked on me. Almost. Yeah, I said. Just weird question. Daniel's photos synced from his trip. Ooh, she teased. Look at him being all modern. I swallowed. There's this picture from a restaurant, and this is going to sound silly, but there's someone in the background who looks like you. A pause, the tiniest hesitation, like a breath caught between ribs. Then she laughed. Me, in his work trip photos, that would be impressive. It's probably nothing, I rushed, offering her the same ramp I offered him. Just your bracelet looked like it. Sweetie, she said, lowering her tone the way you do with a nervous child. You are tired. That's what this is. When you're alone too much, your brain starts connecting dots that aren't connected. My skin prickled. The same language, the same shape of reassurance. Tired, connecting dots, not connected. Right, I said, because my mouth still wanted peace more than truth. Yeah, I guess. You know Daniel, she continued, warm and certain. He's working his butt off for you too. Don't let anxiety steal the good things. Come over later. We'll eat something, watch something dumb, reset your brain. Reset your brain. Like my mind was the problem, not the picture. I almost thanked her. That's how deep the conditioning ran, gratitude for being dismissed. But then I heard myself ask quietly, where were you yesterday? Another pause, longer this time. Yesterday, she repeated too casually. Work, then I was wiped. Why? No reason, I said quickly. Just I thought I might have seen you. Forget it. She exhaled a soft laugh. You didn't, promise. Now stop spiraling, okay? I love you. I love you. The words landed like a blanket over a body you're trying to hide. For a few minutes after that call, I wandered the apartment touching ordinary things like they could anchor me. The chair back, the counter edge, the soft throw blanket Mia bought us for cozy nights. I replayed their exact phrasing, overthinking, tired, reset, like matching fingerprints. Daniel had never told me to reset anything before Mia started saying it, yet this morning he used the same patient scold that always makes me apologize. I remembered last month's dinner when Mia teased that I could spiral, and Daniel laughed a beat too late, as if he'd heard the line before. I opened my call log and saw Daniel's missed call from yesterday, sandwiched between two texts from Mia within the same minute. Coincidence, my attachment insisted. Coordination, my intuition countered. The room felt staged, like my life had props and I was the only one without the script. And suddenly my own home didn't feel like mine anymore. After we hung up, I sat on the couch with my phone in my lap and felt my world tilt. 2 conversations, 2 smiles I could hear through the air, 2 people telling me I was tired, anxious, imagining, 2 people using affection like a sedative. And the most terrifying part was how badly I wanted to accept it. I wanted to be the woman whose life was still simple. The woman who didn't have to become suspicious, who didn't have to count days and examine shadows. I wanted comfort. I wanted the version of love that didn't require proof. But the photo existed. The bracelet existed. And somewhere in that hotel lobby, a baby existed too. I opened the baby picture anyway. My finger trembled as if it belonged to someone else. Mir at the stroller, the blanket, the date, yesterday. I tried to picture any innocent explanation that could survive those details. Each one collapsed as soon as I held it up to the light. That's when I understood the real contrast. My attachment was begging for a story, but my intuition was begging for safety. And intuition doesn't beg without a reason. If they wouldn't tell me the truth, then I couldn't afford to ask for it like a favor. I would have to find it, quietly, carefully, and without giving them a chance to move first. The first thing I learned about suspicion is that it changes the air in your own home. Nothing looked different, but everything felt sharp, like the edges had been sanded off my life, and someone put them back unfinished. I kept expecting Daniel to walk through the door and read my face like he always claimed he could. I kept expecting Mia to text me a meme, to tug me back into normal. And I kept realizing that normal had become a costume everyone else knew how to wear. So I did the one thing I'd always judged other women for doing. I looked. Quietly, carefully, like someone trying to remove a splinter without letting anyone see the blood. I started with the photos because that was where the lie had first flickered. I opened the baby picture again and tapped the little information icon I'd never cared about in my life. A panel slid up with details that felt too cold to belong to something so personal. Date taken, time, device, file name. It listed the city, exactly the one Daniel claimed he'd visited, and a street that made my stomach drop because it wasn't near the convention center he'd mentioned. It was near the riverfront hotels. I copied the address into my notes app like it was a crime scene. Then I did something even smaller and somehow worse. I compared it to Daniel's calendar. His work calendar was synced to our shared iPad because it's easier for planning weekends, appointments, life. I hadn't touched it in months. Now I opened it and stared at 3 neat blocks: travel, client meetings, dinner. Everything labeled like a man who wanted his life to look organized. But the times didn't line up the way they should have. Dinner was scheduled at 8 p.m. The photo in the hotel lobby was taken at 3:17 p.m. The meeting block covered the afternoon, yet the location tag showed he wasn't within 5 miles of the office district. It wasn't proof. Not yet. It was the first dot. I told myself I was being responsible. I told myself I just needed to quiet my anxiety. But the truth was I was building a case against the people I loved, and that kind of reasoning doesn't come from nowhere. Next, I checked our bank app. I hate money conversations. I always have. Growing up, money was either a fight or a fear, so as an adult I preferred to treat it like background noise. Daniel handled the bills. I covered groceries and small stuff. It worked. It was another way I proved I trusted him. That trust tasted sour as soon as I opened the transaction list. There were normal charges: gas, coffee, an airport parking fee. Then there were charges that had no business being there. A boutique hotel deposit that wasn't the one he'd mentioned. A restaurant tab so expensive it looked like a wedding reception. 2 pharmacy charges in the same city. And 1 line that made my throat go tight: Baby Boutique. I stared at it until the letters blurred. Baby Boutique wasn't diapers at a grocery store. It wasn't a random convenience purchase. It was deliberate. It was intention wrapped in a cute name. I clicked into the transaction. It showed the merchant address. The same riverfront area. Another dot. I didn't call Daniel. I didn't call Mia. I sat very still and listened to my own breathing, like I was trying to prove to myself that I could survive this information without shattering. Then I went to social media, because even liars leave crumbs where they feel safe. Mia's profile was polished: photos with friends, gym selfies, the occasional sunset with a caption about gratitude. I scrolled back to the last week. Nothing obvious. No baby, no hotel, no Daniel. But then I noticed something I'd never noticed because I'd never needed to: her timing. On the day Daniel traveled, Mia posted a work grind story at 6 a.m., a photo of her coffee and laptop. Then nothing for 12 hours. Then at 7 p.m., a blurry photo of a street at night with the caption "Busy Day." No location tag. The same day, Daniel texted me at 7:12 p.m. "Client dinner running late. Talk tomorrow." My brain did a thing it hadn't done before. It stopped asking, "Why would they?" and started asking, "How long have they?" I opened Daniel's texts and scrolled up. I look for patterns the way you look for symptoms after a diagnosis. There it was. The nights he went dark were the nights Mia had posted vague, untagged stories. The weekends he said he had to catch up on work were the weekends Mia would suddenly be out of town visiting family I'd never met, photos she never posted. I went back months, my thumb cramped, my chest hurt, dot after dot after dot. It felt like someone was turning on lights in a room I'd lived in for years and never truly seen. I started documenting everything in a single note because if I kept it in my head, I'd talk myself out of it. Dates, times, charges, screenshots, the hotel address, the merchant name, the way Daniel and Mia used the same phrases when they reassured me. Overthinking, tired, reset. It was language like a handshake. By day 2, I had a timeline. By day 3, I had a sickening sense of design. This wasn't a messy affair with mistakes and panic. This was scheduled, calendared, budgeted. This was a second life that ran parallel to mine like train tracks, close enough to hear, never close enough to touch. The powerlessness I'd felt in that first moment, the baby and the stroller, began to shift. Not into power exactly, but into strategy. If my life had become a puzzle, then I would stop pretending I didn't see the pieces. I checked Daniel's email on the shared tablet, telling myself I wasn't doing anything wrong because it was technically ours. I searched for the hotel name from the bank charge. It popped up immediately. Reservation confirmation, receipt, room upgrade. The guest name was Daniel's. The dates matched. And in the details, almost casually, was a second guest listed as M. My hands went numb. M could mean anything. M could be a typo. M could be Mr. M could be nothing. But I knew Mia's first initial. I took a screenshot anyway, my heart hammering like it was trying to outrun my choices. Then, buried beneath that email, was another receipt. A clinic, not a hospital. A clinic with a name that sounded gentle and modern, like a spa. The receipt listed postnatal consultation and infant wellness follow-up. I read it 3 times. The words didn't change. Postnatal. Infant. Follow-up. My mouth went dry. I remembered Mia's recent stomach bug, Daniel's sudden tenderness toward her, the way he'd offered to pick her up because she shouldn't drive. I remembered the new baby store charge. I remembered the stroller. This wasn't just cheating. This was a family, forming in the dark, while I was still standing in the light pretending it was warm. That night, Daniel came home and talked about work like he always did. He asked me about my day. He made a joke. He touched my shoulder when he walked past, and I had to fight the urge to flinch. I looked at him and thought, how does a person live 2 lives and still have energy to smile? Mia texted me a heart, just a heart, no words. I stared at it and felt something inside me harden, not into hatred, but into clarity. Because now I understood the real betrayal. They weren't just lying. They were managing me. They were feeding me comfort in measured doses so I'd stay in my place and keep the first life running while they built the second. It wasn't passion, it was logistics. And logistics leave records, and I was done being managed. I went back to the photos one more time, determined to find something concrete enough that even my own doubts couldn't dissolve it. I zoomed into the stroller. On the handlebar, clipped like a small flag, was a plush toy, a pale gray rabbit with a stitched smile and one ear slightly bent. It was the kind of baby item you buy when you're planning to see it again. I knew that rabbit. 3 weeks earlier, Mia had shown me a picture on her phone. "Isn't this adorable?" she'd said, laughing. "My coworker got it for her niece." I'd barely looked, because why would I memorize a stranger's baby toy? But now the rabbit was right there, in Daniel's photo, in Mia's hand, in their other life. One specific clue, soft and harmless looking, pointed like an arrow at something far bigger than an affair. It pointed at a baby that wasn't a coincidence. It pointed at a plan. The baby became the center of everything, like a black hole that pulled my thoughts into a single, unbearable orbit. Not the affair, not the hotel, not even Mia's face in the mirror. The baby. Because cheating is something people survive. It's awful, but it has a shape you can name. You can say the word and watch it land. Affair, betrayal, divorce. But a baby, new, tiny, real, wasn't just a word. It was a life. It was permanence. It was a door that only opens one direction. I stared at the photo until it felt like my eyes were bruised. Then I started doing what my mind had learned to do these past days, turning pain into questions. How old? Whose? How long? I zoomed in on the baby's face again, the soft roundness, the slightly swollen eyelids, that newborn stillness. The blanket. The way the baby's head rested heavy, like gravity, was new. I wasn't a doctor, but I wasn't ignorant either. I'd watched friends bring home newborns. I'd held Bobbies who smelled like milk and warm skin. This one looked fresh, not weeks old, days maybe. And that realization made my stomach drop, because it dragged a timeline behind it like chains. I opened my calendar, not Daniel's, mine. I went back month by month, looking at my own memories like a stranger searching for a missing person. I marked when Daniel started traveling more. I marked when he started coming home later, smelling like different soap. I marked when he stopped touching my stomach absent-mindedly while we watched TV, the way he used to, like he was already imagining our future. Because there had been a future we talked about. We weren't reckless about it. We weren't the type to announce plans at dinner parties. But we'd tried, quietly, like people who believe love is something you build patiently. At first it was sweet, tracking ovulation apps, joking about timing, Daniel's hand on my hip with a grin that said, "We're really doing this." Then it became less sweet. Months passed, app notifications became tiny insults. My body became a calendar I couldn't control. Friends announced pregnancies and I smiled so hard my cheeks hurt. I told myself not everyone gets it quickly. I told myself stress can delay things. I told myself I was fine. But Daniel changed in that period, too. At first he was supportive, the way men are when they think the problem is temporary. He came with me to one appointment. He held my hand in the waiting room and whispered dumb jokes in my ear. He told me, "We'll be okay. We have time." Then, slowly, he started moving away from the topic like it was a room he didn't want to enter. He'd shut down conversations with a gentle shrug. "Let's not pressure it," he'd say, and I'd nod because I didn't want to be the anxious wife. I didn't want to be the woman who made motherhood into a demand. The irony is that I was trying so hard to be easy to love that I didn't notice love becoming conditional. And Mia had been there through all of it. She knew how much I wanted a baby. She knew because she'd held me while I cried in the kitchen one night after a negative test, my shoulders shaking, my pride dissolving. She knew because she'd said, "You're going to be such a good mom," and I'd believed her with the kind of trust that feels sacred. So when I saw the clinic receipt, postnatal infant follow-up, my brain couldn't put it anywhere but next to that memory. The contrast was so cruel it almost felt staged. Me crying into Mia's shirt, Mia standing behind a stroller in Daniel's photo. It didn't make sense. It couldn't. Unless it did. I started replaying Mia's last year through the lens of this new reality, and suddenly her privacy wasn't just a personality trait. It was a cover. There had been a stretch when she stopped coming to certain gatherings. "Just tired," she'd say. She'd wear baggier clothes sometimes, then snap back to fitted outfits like she was proving something. She stopped posting full-body photos for months, then returned with selfies cropped at the shoulders. I remembered one afternoon at my place when she'd flinched as she sat down, a hand briefly touching her lower back. I'd asked if she was okay and she'd waved it off. "Just work stress," she'd said. "My body hates my job." I remembered the way she suddenly became weird about being photographed. At a friend's birthday, someone tried to take a group pic and Mia stepped aside, laughing like it was a joke. "I look horrible," she'd said. "Don't document me." I thought it was insecurity. I thought it was her being dramatic. Now it felt like hiding. And Daniel, there were small things I dismissed because love makes excuses feel like loyalty. The way he'd started keeping his phone face down. The way he took calls on the balcony so he wouldn't disturb me. The way he began showering immediately after trips, like he was washing off more than airport grime. My mind ran back to the night 3 months ago when he came home from a late meeting and he smelled like baby powder. I'd laughed and asked if he'd been holding someone's kid. He'd smiled too quickly. "Probably from the hotel soap," he said. Hotel soap doesn't smell like baby powder. I wasn't just investigating a baby. I was investigating the version of myself who had let these moments pass. And that was its own kind of grief, betrayal layered on top of self-blame, like salt in a wound. I searched the baby boutique online, heart in my throat. Their website was pastel and cheerful, like a lie told in a sweet voice. I scrolled through products until I found it, the pale gray rabbit with the bent ear. Classic bunny clip, the description said. My hands went cold. The price was listed, the same price as the bank charge. I stared at the screen and realized something I didn't want to realize. They didn't buy that rabbit on a whim. They didn't buy it for a coworker or a niece. They bought it because they were parents. Because parents buy small things like that. They choose softness and safety and the kinds of details you never notice until you're building a life around them. My chest tightened so hard I thought I might be sick. I stood up too quickly, dizzy, and had to grip the counter. The kitchen blurred for a second, and for a strange moment I understood why people faint in movies. It's not drama. It's your body trying to escape a reality your mind can't hold. I pressed my hands against the countertop and whispered, "Whose baby is that?" There were only a few answers, and each one tore a different piece out of me. If the baby belonged to Mia and someone else, Daniel's involvement would still be unforgivable. But at least it wouldn't mean he'd built a family without me. If the baby belonged to Daniel and someone else, it would mean my husband had crossed into a life I could never compete with. And if the baby belonged to Daniel and Mia, my stomach rolled. That would mean the betrayal wasn't just romance. It was replacement. It would mean that while I was tracking cycles and swallowing disappointment, my best friend was tracking something else. It would mean that while I was imagining Daniel as a father beside me, he was already becoming one with her. Hope versus humiliation. Motherhood dreams vs stolen milestones. I thought about all the times Mia had hugged me, her voice soft, telling me to be patient. I thought about Daniel's hand on my shoulder, telling me not to pressure it. How easy it would be to delay someone's dream if you were quietly living it yourself. The thought was so sharp it felt like it cut through my ribs. And then the biggest shift happened, not in what I knew, but in what I understood. Someone didn't just lie to me. They edited me out. They didn't just cheat. They built a version of family where I was unnecessary, where my place could be filled while I was still standing in it, believing it was mine. That's when the baby stopped being a mystery and became a message. A warning that my life had been rewritten, and I was the last one to receive the update. The scariest thing I discovered wasn't that I could be lied to. It was that I could learn the truth and still smile. The day after I found the clinic receipt, Daniel came home with flowers. Not because he'd ever been a consistent flower man, because he wasn't, but because guilt has its own instincts. He kissed my cheek, held the bouquet out like an offering, and said, "Thought you might like these." I took them. I even inhaled them like a normal person. I said, "They're beautiful," and my voice didn't crack. Inside, my mind was a locked room full of screaming. That night, Mia called me, and I answered on speaker while stirring pasta, pretending I was just a woman with a routine, not a woman who had a timeline in her notes app and a rabbit clip burned into her memory. "Hey, love," she said. "How are you feeling?" "Better." "Better," I lied easily and hated myself for how natural it sounded. "Just needed sleep." "That's my girl," Mia said, affectionate. "I knew you were spiraling for nothing." "For nothing." I swallowed, tasting metal. "Yeah, for nothing." Daniel sat at the table, scrolling his phone, listening with half an ear. When Mia laughed at something, he smiled too. It was such a small moment, two people reacting to the same voice, that it felt like a secret handshake performed in front of me. That's when I decided asking was useless. They had a script, they had practiced, and I had been the audience for so long I didn't know how to walk onto the stage. So I changed roles. I became the kind of woman I'd never been, quietly strategic. I stopped thinking in emotions and started thinking in outcomes. Not revenge, not chaos, just clarity. Step 1, act normal. Normal meant I laughed at Daniel's jokes. Normal meant I asked about his day. Normal meant I kissed him goodnight and turned away before my face could betray me. Normal meant I texted Mia back with emojis and inside jokes and the same "love you" she used like a shield. My stomach turned every time I performed it, but performance was safer than panic. Panic makes you sloppy. Panic gives liars warning. And I needed them unprepared. Step 2. Create a situation where their story had to be consistent, where the truth couldn't hide behind vague excuses. A confrontation in private would just give them room to deny, to twist, to gang up on my doubt until I apologized again. I couldn't let the truth become a debate. So I built a trap out of something they both valued: appearances. I texted Mia first. "Me, dinner at Hours Friday. I miss you. Also, Daniel's back so we can all hang." I watched the typing bubbles appear almost immediately, like she'd been waiting for my invitation. "Mia, yes, I've missed you too. I'll bring dessert." Dessert, as if she hadn't been feeding my marriage to herself for months. Then I went to Daniel. "Hey," I said the next morning, casual, leaning against the counter like we were normal. "I invited Mia over Friday, just dinner." Daniel looked up too fast. It wasn't dramatic, just a flicker, the smallest crack in his composure. "Oh," he said, "Friday I might be tired." "You're always tired," I said with a smile I had to force. "It'll be nice. She's my best friend. It'll be fun." He nodded slow. "Yeah, sure, fun." Fun, another word that didn't belong anymore. For the next 2 days, I watched them the way you watch people who don't know you're watching. I listened for the spaces between their words, the micropauses where their brains adjusted. Mia texted me more than usual, little check-ins. "How's your day? Did you eat? Don't work too hard." It sounded caring. It also sounded like maintenance. Daniel became oddly helpful around the house. He took out the trash without being asked. He offered to do the dishes. He complimented my cooking twice in one night. I noticed every kindness and felt the bitter contrast. Love shouldn't feel like bribery. Friday came, and I prepared like I was hosting a dinner party and a trial at the same time. I cleaned the apartment until it shone. I lit candles. I set the table with our nice plates. And while I did it, I made calls, quiet ones. A close friend from work, Jenna, who I trusted and who knew Mia but wasn't entangled in our history. "Can you swing by around 8?" I asked, voice light. "Just for a quick hello. I need support." Jenna didn't ask too many questions. "Of course," she said. "I'll come." Then I called my sister. We weren't the kind of family that talked every day, but she could hear something in my tone. "Keep your phone on," I said. "If I text you, I might need you to come over." "What's happening?" she asked. "I'll explain later," I said. "Just be ready." By the time Mia knocked, my hands were steady. My heart wasn't, but it was contained. She walked in smiling, holding a cake box. She looked perfect in that effortless way she always did, hair glossy, lipstick soft, eyes bright. She hugged me tightly, and for a second my body betrayed me by relaxing into the familiar. Then she pulled back and said, "Look at you. You look better. I told you it was just anxiety." I smiled. "You were right," I said. Daniel appeared behind me, and Mia's face did something subtle like a light turning on. She smiled at him, warm, practiced. Daniel returned at a beat too quickly, like reflex. The air between them was invisible but crowded. We ate, we talked. Mia told a story about a coworker. Daniel told a story about a client. I laughed in the right places. My voice stayed steady. I kept the conversation soft because softness makes people careless. Softness makes them drop their guard. Then I began to apply pressure, gently, like turning a screw. "So," I said, pouring wine, "Daniel's trip sounded intense. Riverfront hotels, fancy dinners." Daniel's fork paused midair. "Riverfront." I glanced at him innocently. "Yeah, isn't that where you stayed?" He recovered quickly. No, I was near the convention center." Mia sipped her wine, eyes on her glass. "Business trips all blur together," she said too quickly. "Hotels are hotels." I nodded like she'd made a great point. Totally. It's funny, though, your photos tagged you near the river. Daniel's jaw tightened, barely noticeable. Photos tag wrong sometimes. True, I said. Technology right. Mia laughed a little too high. Exactly. I kept my tone light. Still, it must have been nice. I saw this big lobby in one picture, huge windows. Daniel blinked. Did you? Mem, I smiled. It looked almost like a place you'd bring someone. Silence flickered. Then Mia jumped in. You're going to make him feel guilty for working, she teased, placing a hand on my arm. It was affectionate. It was also a steering wheel. Daniel exhaled. Yeah, I'm just trying to keep us afloat. Us. The word hit like a dare. I wanted to ask which us, but I didn't, not yet. Instead, I leaned into the performance. I know, I said, warm. I appreciate you. And there it was, the moment I saw the coordination in real time. Mia's shoulders loosened. Daniel's posture softened. They relaxed because they thought the danger had passed. That's what liars do. They assess. They adapt. They relax when they think you're still manageable. So I shifted again, one more turn of the screw. By the way, I said, casual, Mia, I meant to ask, did you ever end up visiting your cousin? The one with the new baby. You mentioned it a while back. Mia's smile froze for half a second. My cousin. Yeah, I said, eyes wide like I was remembering something cute. You showed me that little bunny clip. You said your coworker got it for her niece or something. It was adorable. Daniel's glass clinked softly against the table. Mia's fingers tightened around her fork. Oh, Mia said. That, yeah. No, I didn't visit. I just thought it was cute. Right, I said, nodding. Still, funny coincidence. There was a bunny clip just like that in Daniel's photo. The room cooled. Not dramatically, just enough that my skin noticed. Daniel laughed, but it didn't reach his eyes. Babe, come on. Lots of baby stuff looks the same. Mia's voice came in fast. You're doing it again, she said gently, like she was worried for me. You're connecting dots. Connecting dots. There it was again, the same phrase, the same script. Love used as a leash. I set my wine down carefully. Maybe, I said, or maybe I'm finally seeing what's in front of me. Mia's eyes widened, just slightly. Daniel's face went very still. At that exact moment, the doorbell rang. Jenna. I stood up, smoothing my shirt, forcing my body to stay calm. Oh, I said brightly, like this was all normal. Jenna's stopping by. I told her to come for dessert. Daniel's eyes flashed to Mia, quick as a signal. Mia blinked back, quick as an answer. And I understood with a sick certainty. She wasn't just involved. She was central. She wasn't the side character in Daniel's lie. She was a co-author. I opened the door and smiled at Jenna like my life wasn't splintering behind my ribs. Hey, I said, stepping aside. Come in. As Jenna walked toward the table, I looked back at Daniel and Mia, two people who had smiled at my questions, two people who had rehearsed reassurance like lullabies. And I knew what came next. I wasn't going to let the truth stay private, negotiable, deniable. I was going to set up the moment where it couldn't hide anymore, where it would have to show its face in full light, with witnesses, with proof, with nowhere left to run. Jenna's smile was bright when she walked in, unaware she'd stepped into a room rigged like a minefield. She hugged Mia, nodded at Daniel, and set her bag on the counter like this was any other Friday. Jenna had no idea. She was the reason I felt brave enough to breathe. I'd invited her because she wasn't part of our tangled history. She couldn't be charmed into protecting them. She'd see what she saw and call it what it was, and if my voice failed, hers wouldn't. Across from me, Daniel kept doing that thing where he played the attentive husband, asking Jenna about work, offering more water, while his eyes kept checking my face, like he was trying to guess the next move in a game he thought he controlled. Mia mirrored him, matching his calm, finishing his sentences in tiny, harmless ways. Two people moving in sync, pretending it was coincidence. Daniel's eyes tracked her, then flicked to Mia, then back to me. His knee bounced under the table. Mia recovered faster, pouring wine and laughing on cue, performing friendship like muscle memory. I felt a strange calm settle in, not peace, but the quiet that comes when you stop bargaining with reality. When dessert came out, I didn't touch it. I set my phone on the table instead. For weeks, I'd been swallowing questions like pills, telling myself that trust meant silence. But trust without truth is just obedience, and I was done obeying. My hands were steady because they had to be. If I shook, they'd label me unstable again, and the lie would get another chance to live. The sound was tiny, but it sliced through the chatter. Mia's eyes dipped to it. Daniel's jaw tightened. Jenna glanced at me. Everything okay? Yeah, I said, and the word sounded like a lie I was done living. I just want to show you something. Daniel chuckled too casually. Show her what? The photos, I said. Mia's lips parted. She reached for her glass, then stalled midair. What photos? Jenna asked, still smiling, but her eyes sharpened. Daniel tried soft. Babe, not this, not in front of. Not this, I repeated. That's what you said when you didn't answer my call at your client dinner. Mia leaned in, voice sweet. Love, you're upset. We can talk later. I asked, letting the single word weigh the room. Daniel went still. I unlocked my phone and pulled up the restaurant shot. The warm light, the mirror, the background face. I turned it toward Jenna, then set it so everyone could see. Jenna frowned. Is that Mia? Mia smiled thinly. No, people look alike. I swiped to the next angle. Then the next. Bracelet, mole, hairline, small details stacking into certainty. Jenna's confusion hardened into disbelief. Why would you be in his work trip pictures? She asked Mia. Mia's voice stayed calm, too calm. I'm not. It's your bracelet, I said. The one we bought together. Daniel exhaled sharply. You're spiraling again. I looked at him. You still want to call this my brain? Then I swiped. The baby photo filled the screen. The hotel lobby, the stroller, Mia's hands on the handle, the gray rabbit clip hanging like a tag. The room went silent. Jenna whispered, Oh my God. Mia's face drained. Daniel's eyes widened, not with remorse but with calculation. That's not, Mia began. Yesterday, I cut in. 3:17 p.m. same city, same trip, same hotel district you said you weren't near. Jenna's voice shook. Whose baby is that? Daniel opened his mouth, then closed it. The silence answered first. Say it, I told him. Whose baby is it? He swallowed. It's complicated. Complicated is taxes, I said. This is a child. Mia's hand shot to Daniel's arm, an intimate reflex that made my stomach flip. Stop, she murmured to him, but her eyes were on me, warning. Jenna stood up slowly, like she needed air. Is that your baby, Daniel? Daniel's gaze darted to Mia, then to me. Can we please do this privately? Private is where you two win, I said. In private, you can deny and I end up apologizing. I opened my notes app and slid the phone toward Jenna. Dates, screenshots, bank charges, the hotel confirmation, the clinic receipt, the baby boutique purchase. The timeline wasn't dramatic. That was the horror of it. It was banal. A hotel receipt here, a meeting block there, a $78 baby boutique charge tucked between gas and groceries. It was a life built quietly, like termites inside a wall. I'd highlighted the overlaps, Daniel traveling on the same days Mia went offline, Daniel working late, when Mia suddenly couldn't talk. I'd even found the reservation email listing a second guest as M. I didn't have to spell it out. The letter did enough. Jenna scrolled, trembling. Postnatal consultation, she read aloud like the words burned. Her eyes snapped to Mia. Were you pregnant? Mia's voice turned sharp. Don't. Were you? Jenna pressed. Mia's gaze flicked to Daniel. Permission, strategy, damage control, an entire conversation in a glance. Daniel rubbed his forehead, suddenly looking like the mask was heavy. It happened, he muttered. What happened? I asked. He stared at the table. Mia and I, we made a mistake. A mistake is forgetting milk, Jenna said, half sob, half laugh. This is a baby. Mia's eyes filled, but the tears felt late, staged. You don't understand, she whispered. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. I watched her cry and remembered her holding me while I cried about negative tests, telling me to be patient. The contrast nearly made me nauseous. How long? I asked, and my voice finally cracked. Not in weakness, more like something breaking free. Daniel's head lifted. Please. How long? Mia whispered, last year. My ears rang. I heard myself asking stupidly, while you were holding my hand, because my mind kept trying to match the betrayal to a moment I could understand. Mia nodded once, tiny, like admitting a minor sin. Daniel's eyes filled, and for a second I saw the version of him I used to trust, the man who once promised me we'd face everything together. Then he looked at Mia again, and that version evaporated. It wasn't supposed to be you, Mia blurted, and immediately regretted it, like the truth slipped out before she could polish it. My skin went cold. Not supposed to be me, like I was a placeholder that overstayed. Daniel whispered, I panicked. As if panic lasts a year, as if panic buys a stroller and schedules follow-ups. Last year, a whole year of holidays and jokes and hugs, a whole year of her calling me love. Daniel rushed in, desperate. It wasn't planned. I tapped the screen. Hotel reservations, calendar blocks, receipts, a clinic, a stroller. You didn't fall into this. Mia flinched. I didn't want to hurt you. The absurdity stole my breath. Then why did you keep coming over? I demanded. Why did you sit on my couch and tell me my anxiety was the problem? Daniel reached for me. I jerked back so fast my chair scraped. Don't touch me. He froze, hand hovering, stunned by my refusal. Jenna's voice turned flat with horror. So the baby is yours, she said to Daniel, and Mia's. Daniel's shoulders sagged. Yes, he whispered. The word landed in my chest and collapsed something quietly, like a building falling inward. I waited for myself to scream. Instead, I felt a cold clarity lace up my spine. This wasn't just an affair. This was a takeover. They hadn't stolen moments. They'd stolen milestones. They built a family while I was still washing dishes in the life I thought was ours. They used my trust as scaffolding. I looked at Mia. You replaced me. No, she sobbed. Yes, I said. You sat at my table and let me confide in you. You smiled when I talked about wanting a baby. You helped me stay calm while you... My throat tightened. The sentence wouldn't finish, because finishing it felt like swallowing glass. Daniel's voice broke. I never stopped loving you. I stared at him. You don't get to say that. Love isn't a feeling you use as camouflage. Love is what you do. And what you did was build a life where I was an obstacle. Jenna wiped her cheeks. What are you going to do? The question clicked a new clock into existence. Because truth doesn't end the story. It starts the next emergency. I looked at the candles, the plates, the half-eaten cake, our staged normal. I felt my body finally catch up, my safety, my money, my future. None of it was guaranteed. I stood. I'm going to survive, I said, and it sounded like a vow. Daniel rose too, panic flashing. Please, we can fix. Fix, I echoed. You can't fix a year of lies and a whole baby. Mia whispered my name, soft like the old days. I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't return time, I said. Sorry doesn't unmake what you chose. I grabbed my phone, my proof, because suddenly proof felt like oxygen. Then I turned to Jenna. Can you stay, just for a minute? Jenna stepped closer without hesitation. Daniel's face twisted. You're going to ruin us. I met his eyes. You already did. And as the words left my mouth, I understood the new problem the truth created. Not heartbreak, not humiliation. Survival. In that silence, I knew the truth hadn't just broken my heart. It had redrawn my entire life. Now I had to decide what happened next, and I had to decide fast. The first lie after the truth is always the most insulting, because it arrives wearing the face of reason. Daniel followed me into the hallway like I was something he could still negotiate with. His voice had that controlled tremble, Hurt husband, worried husband, not cornered liar. You didn't have to do that in front of Jenna, he said, palms open like he was the one being wronged. You embarrassed everyone. Embarrassed everyone. I stared at him, wondering how a man could create a whole baby behind my back and still speak the language of etiquette. You're worried about embarrassment, I asked, and my voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else. Mia hovered near the table, eyes wet, lipstick still perfect. She looked like grief styled for an audience. Please, she whispered, let's not blow this up. Blow this up, as if the explosion hadn't already happened inside me. Jenna stepped between me and Daniel without making it dramatic, just a quiet shield. Stop, she said, firm. She asked, you lied, don't act like she's the problem. Daniel's jaw clenched. He swallowed his anger, then redirected it. You don't understand our marriage, he snapped at Jenna. And there it was, the move. Isolate the witness, turn it into outsiders don't get it. Shrink what happened until it fits inside their comfort. I held up my phone. My marriage was a spreadsheet, I said. Receipts, calendar blocks, a stroller, don't tell me I don't understand. For a moment, Daniel looked like he might collapse into real remorse. Then he chose something else, control. Okay, he said tightly. Okay, let's talk logistics. You're upset, you're reacting, but we have to be smart. Smart, another word men use when they want a woman to stop feeling. What are you saying? I asked. I'm saying, he replied, don't go calling people, don't post anything, don't. Don't ruin your image, I finished. He flinched, and I saw it clearly. The truth had cracked him open, but consequences terrified him more. Mia finally stepped forward, hands wringing. It's not like that, she said, and the sentence sounded automatic, like she'd rehearsed it for a day she always knew would come. We didn't plan it. I laughed once, sharp, ugly. You planned dinners, hotels, clinic appointments. You planned how to keep me calm. She sobbed. I didn't want to lose you. The audacity of that line made my vision blur. You already did, I said. You lost me the first time you chose him, and then you kept choosing him every time you looked me in the eye and called me love. I grabbed my coat. I didn't know where I was going yet. I just knew I couldn't stay in a room where the air was full of their excuses. Daniel's voice rose, panicking now. Where are you going? Somewhere I can breathe. You can't just leave, he said. This is our home. Our home. The word hit like a joke with no punchline. Jenna touched my elbow. Come with me, she murmured. Just tonight. I nodded before I could overthink it. Overthinking had kept me trapped for a year. Movement was the only thing that felt like control. As I walked to the door, Daniel followed, lowering his voice like intimacy could still sway me. We can work through this, he said. It was a mistake. Mia, she needed help. Stop, I whispered. Don't rewrite this into charity. His face tightened. So now I'm the villain. I turned and looked at him fully. You're a man who lied to his wife for a year and had a baby with her best friend. If you need a label, pick one. Mia made a sound, like she wanted to call my name the way she used to, soft, intimate, a shortcut into my heart. I didn't let her. I walked out. Outside, the night air hit my lungs like water after drowning. Jenna drove me to her place and made tea I didn't drink. My phone buzzed endlessly. Daniel, Mia, unknown numbers, missed calls stacking like bricks. Then the messages started. From Daniel, we need to talk like adults. From Daniel, please don't do anything rash. From Daniel, think about what you're throwing away. Throwing away. As if my marriage was a vase I'd dropped, not a house he'd set on fire. From Mia, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. From Mia, I never wanted to hurt you. From Mia, please don't tell anyone yet. Don't tell anyone yet. The truth wasn't even fully out, and they were already managing its release. My hands shook as I scrolled, my mind splitting between two instincts. Curl into shame and hide, or blast the truth so loudly they could never twist it. Dignity versus revenge. I wanted to win the story. I wanted them to feel what I felt. I wanted everyone to look at them and see what I saw, two people smiling while they replaced me. but I also wanted to disappear. Shame is sneaky. It convinces you that someone else's betrayal is your stain. By morning, the fallout had spread beyond my control anyway. My sister called. "What happened?" she asked, voice tight. "Daniel's mom just texted me." I swallowed. He told his mom. "He told someone," she said. "And whatever version he told is not the version you deserve." Of course, he moved first. Then Jenna's phone pinged. Her eyebrows lifted as she read. "Mia posted," she said slowly. My stomach dropped. Posted what? Jenna turned the screen toward me. Mia had uploaded a story, black background, white text. It was vague on purpose, a fog machine for sympathy. "Sometimes people you love go through things you don't understand. Please respect privacy." Privacy, the word she used like a weapon. Within minutes, reactions rolled in: hearts, supportive comments, people asking if she was okay. She was painting herself as the wounded one before I'd even spoken. That was when I realized this wasn't just personal betrayal, it was public strategy. Daniel's sister texted me, not to ask if I was okay, to say, "I hope you're not blowing things out of proportion. Daniel's under a lot of stress." Stress, like it caused hotel receipts and postnatal clinics. Then Daniel's mom called me directly. I stared at the screen until it stopped ringing. I couldn't handle her voice telling me to forgive, to be the bigger person, to think of Daniel's future. Betrayal doesn't just break your heart, it recruits people. Suddenly everyone becomes a judge, and you're the one on trial for reacting. By noon, the practical fears kicked in, cold and urgent. Our accounts, our lease, our health insurance. The fact that Daniel made more money than I did. The fact that my name was on the apartment, but his name was on most of the bills. The fact that I'd never demanded to see everything because I thought love meant trust. I opened my banking app again and felt my pulse spike. 2 transfers had happened overnight, small enough to seem normal, large enough to matter. Money moved. Quietly. My mouth went dry. This was the next phase. Not apologies, but protection. Not remorse, but damage control. I called my sister back. "I need you," I said. "I need help figuring out what's mine." "You're coming to my place," she replied instantly. "And you're calling a lawyer." The word lawyer made my stomach twist. I didn't want to be that woman, the one who had to turn love into paperwork. But love had already been turned into receipts by them. That afternoon, Daniel texted again. "Let's meet, just us. We can handle this quietly." Quietly, always quietly. Quietly was where they thrived. Quietly was where they could make me doubt my own eyes. I stared at my phone and felt something settle in my chest. Heavier than anger, steadier than grief. Closure wasn't going to come from their explanations. Their remorse would always arrive shaped like self-protection. If I wanted peace, it wouldn't be because they gave it to me. It would be because I took control of what I allowed. It would come from boundaries, clear, hard, unnegotiable boundaries, built not to punish them but to save me. The first boundary I set wasn't loud. It was a silence. I stopped answering. Not because I was being dramatic, not because I wanted to punish them, but because every time I engaged, I could feel myself slipping back into the old role. The woman who explained her feelings until the other person agreed she was allowed to have them. The woman who tried to win the truth like it was something someone else could grant. I didn't need permission to know what I knew. So when Daniel called, I let it ring. When Mia texted paragraphs that started with "I never meant," I let the screen go dark. My hands shook the first few times. My chest hurt like I was holding my breath underwater. But with each unanswered message, something inside me unclenched. I wasn't abandoning them. I was returning to myself. My sister, Kira, picked me up that evening with the brisk efficiency of someone who refuses to let pain turn you into a statue. "Okay," she said as soon as I got into her car. "We're doing 3 things tonight: sleep, eat, plan." Plan. The word felt like a rope thrown into a flood. At her apartment, she cleared a space at her kitchen table like we were about to build a life out of spreadsheets and stubbornness. Jenna came over too, carrying groceries, and the kind of steady presence that doesn't ask you to perform your grief. They didn't tell me to calm down. They didn't tell me to be the bigger person. They didn't try to rush me into forgiveness. They treated what happened like what it was, a betrayal with consequences. Kira slid a notebook toward me. Start writing down everything you know, dates, transfers, accounts, bills, anything he might try to move. My throat tightened. He already transferred money last night. Kira's face went still. Okay, then we move faster. The next day became a blur of practical steps, tiny, unglamorous acts that felt like stitching my skin back together. I opened a new bank account in my name only. The clerk asked if I wanted checks. I almost laughed at the absurdity, my life collapsing and someone offering me checks like it was normal. I said yes anyway, because normal wasn't the goal. Control was. I changed passwords, email, banking, social media, streaming services, anything that was shared, anything that could be used to watch me or twist my access into leverage. Each new password felt like a small lock clicking into place. Then I gathered documents like a person preparing for war. Lease agreement, tax returns, pay stubs, insurance information, screenshots of transactions, the hotel receipts, the clinic email, the M on the reservation. I printed things even though it felt old-fashioned because paper can't be deleted remotely. Kira watched me work and said, "Good, make copies, put them somewhere safe." Safe, another word that had changed meaning. I called a lawyer on day 3. My voice almost failed when the receptionist asked why I was calling. It felt humiliating to speak the story out loud in a professional tone, like betrayal was something that could be filed. But the lawyer didn't flinch when I said my husband had a baby with my best friend. She didn't gasp or offer sympathy like a stranger. She asked questions. Calm, specific, powerful questions that reminded me that my feelings weren't the only thing that mattered. Facts did too. What accounts are joint? Whose name is on the lease? Do you have proof of the transfers? Have you confronted him in writing? Do you feel physically safe? That last question hit me harder than I expected. I had been so focused on emotional devastation that I'd forgotten the most basic thing. Safety isn't only about bruises. It's about stability. It's about whether you can pay rent. It's about whether someone can take your future while you're still crying over your past. When I hung up, my hands were sweaty, but my mind felt clearer. Daniel texted again that afternoon. The tone had shifted from pleading to bargaining. We can do this without lawyers. Let's be reasonable. Think about what people will say. People, always image. For a moment, I felt the old pull, the urge to respond, to explain, to tell him how much he'd hurt me in the perfect words so he'd finally understand. The urge to make him look at the wreckage and apologize in a way that healed me. That urge is an addiction. Not to the person, but to the fantasy that if you explain yourself well enough, the person who harmed you will become safe. I stared at the message until the craving passed, like a wave that rises and falls whether you move or not. Then I did something that felt radical. I wrote one sentence. Do not contact me directly. Communicate through my lawyer. My finger hovered over send. My heart tried to bargain. What if this makes him angry? What if this makes it worse? What if he thinks I'm cold? Then I remembered. Cold is what they called women who stopped being manageable. I hit send. The quiet afterward was terrifying. Then it was freeing. Mia tried next. Her message was a flood. Apologies, crying emojis, I love you. I never meant to, you're my sister, don't hate me. Please talk to me. I read it once, then twice, feeling each line pull at the old thread that used to tie us together. Best friends aren't just friends. They're witnesses. They hold your memories. They know where you've been tender. Losing Mia felt like losing a part of my history. But she had chosen that. She had traded sisterhood for a secret life. I didn't reply. I blocked her. My thumb shook when I did it, because blocking someone you love feels like cutting off a limb. But what I was cutting off wasn't love. It was access. The next reclamation wasn't legal. It was physical. Kira forced me outside. "Walk," she said, handing me sneakers like a prescription. "Your body's stuck in fight or flight. We need to remind it you're alive." So I walked. Around her neighborhood, past closed shops and barking dogs and people living ordinary lives. The world didn't stop for my heartbreak. It kept moving, indifferent. At first that hurt. Then it helped. Each step was a small act of defiance against the part of me that wanted to curl into shame. I started eating again, not much, but enough. I started sleeping in short, broken blocks. I started showering at regular times, not because I cared about looking okay, but because routine is a form of shelter. Self-protection isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it's brushing your teeth when you don't want to exist. I made a list of things I could control, and I looked at it when my mind tried to spiral back into their story. My money. My home plan. My boundaries. My support system. My next hour. Not the baby, not the lies, not what people said, not whether Daniel felt guilty, not whether Mia cried. Just my next hour. The shame still came in waves, especially at night. I'd remember Mia's smile at my wedding. I'd remember Daniel's hand on my back at family dinners. I'd replay every moment I'd dismissed, every red flag I'd painted beige so it would match my idea of love. But then I'd catch myself and say out loud, I wasn't stupid, I was trusting. There's a difference. One is a flaw, the other is a virtue used against you. And slowly, that distinction began to rebuild my self-respect. Jenna sat with me one evening while Kira took a call. "You know what's wild?" Jenna said softly. "They're going to try to make this about you, about your reaction, about your instability." I nodded. I can already feel it. Jenna leaned closer. "Don't let them, you're not crazy. You're waking up." Waking up. That word landed like a sunrise. Because that's what this was, beneath the pain, awakening. I was stepping out of a life where I constantly edited myself to be easy, to be agreeable, to be forgiving. I was learning that strength isn't just endurance. Strength is deciding what you will no longer tolerate. By the end of the week, I was better. I wasn't healed. I wasn't smiling in the mirror like a movie montage. But I was choosing myself in small, repeatable ways. And those choices started to add up. With distance, even a little perspective began to creep in, quietly at first, then more firmly. I started seeing the shape of the whole thing, not just the pain. And the deeper meaning of what really happened, what they tried to take from me, beyond love, was finally coming into focus. It took me a while to understand that the baby wasn't the sharpest part of what happened to me. The baby was proof, undeniable, living proof that my marriage had been split open and hollowed out. But proof isn't the same as injury. Proof is just the flashlight. The injury was what the light revealed. When I replay those months now, the affair feels almost simple in comparison. Disgusting, yes. Devastating, yes. But still simple. Two people crossing a line, a betrayal you can name. What I lived through was something quieter and more violent. Coordination. It was the way they moved through my life together like they had a map, and I didn't. The way they used the language of care to keep me calm. Overthinking. Tired. Reset. They didn't just lie about where they were. They lied about who I was allowed to be inside my own story. Because the real theft wasn't sex, or love, or even time. The real theft was reality. They took my reality and replaced it with a version that served them. They fed me comfort like a sedative so I'd keep functioning, paying bills, hosting dinners, smiling at jokes, while they built something else behind my back. A parallel life, running quietly on my trust like a machine plugged into my wall. And when you steal someone's reality, you steal more than information. You steal their instincts. You steal their confidence. You steal their ability to say, I know what I saw. That's why gaslighting hurts, even when you have evidence. Because it isn't designed to erase the facts. It's designed to erase you. For a long time, I thought my biggest mistake was not noticing sooner. I obsessed over the details, how Daniel's stories didn't line up, how Mia's privacy had holes, how my gut had whispered and I'd shushed it. I replayed every moment I had chosen comfort over confrontation, and shame tried to wear my face like a mask. Then, one morning, I caught myself mid-spiral and asked a different question. What kind of person would I have had to become to suspect them? To look at my husband and my best friend, the two people who had held my hands and spoken my name with warmth, and assume they were lying. The answer was simple, and it set me free. I would have had to become someone who doesn't trust. And that wasn't a flaw I was willing to adopt just to protect myself from their choices. Trust is not stupidity. Trust is integrity. It's a belief that people who claim to love you won't make you the punchline of your own life. They took that integrity and used it like a lever. That was their crime, not that I had trust, but that they exploited it. When I tell the story now, people always fixate on the baby. They get stuck there because it's shocking and tangible. A stroller in a hotel lobby, a rabbit clip, a tiny life that makes the betrayal feel cinematic. But I think about other things. I think about the way Mia hugged me and said, "You deserve this," at my wedding, and then spent a year helping Daniel hide the truth from me. I think about the way Daniel asked me to be reasonable, as if reason meant silence. I think about how quickly their apologies turned into negotiations, how they tried to control the narrative the same way they'd controlled me. And that's where the moral line becomes clear. Greed doesn't always look like money. Sometimes greed is wanting everything: the spouse at home, the lover on the side, the public image, the private thrill. Greed is wanting the benefits of loyalty without the responsibility of honesty. Greed is building a second life and expecting the first life to keep running smoothly because someone else is doing the emotional labor of believing in you. Integrity is the opposite. Integrity is choosing one life and living it truthfully. Integrity is admitting your choices before they become traps. Integrity is honoring the humanity of the person who trusts you, even when it's inconvenient. They chose greed. I chose integrity eventually. And that eventually matters because resilience isn't something you're born with. It's something you practice when you don't have another option. I practiced it in the smallest ways first: blocking numbers, opening new accounts, printing receipts, taking walks when my body wanted to fold. I practiced it by refusing to beg for explanations. I practiced it by letting my boundaries be the closure. Because closure isn't a conversation where the person who hurt you finally says the perfect words. Closure is the moment you stop handing them the microphone. Daniel and Mia never gave me a satisfying ending. They never delivered a confession that made it all make sense. They never offered remorse that felt pure. They tried to keep controlling the story right up to the edge of consequences. So I stopped waiting for them. That's the part people don't expect when they ask how I'm doing now. They expect bitterness or revenge or a dramatic glow-up with perfect lipstick and a new boyfriend. What I have is something quieter and more solid. I have myself back. Not the version of me who was easy to manage, quick to doubt her instincts, eager to keep the peace at her own expense. A different version, the one who knows that love without honesty is not love. The one who understands that betrayal doesn't just break hearts, it tests identities. The one who can say, without shaking, I deserve a life that doesn't require me to ignore my own eyes. I didn't lose my life. I recovered it, piece by piece, boundary by boundary, truth by truth. And if your proof was sitting in front of you, would you still doubt yourself?